Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian, Pace reporting live here at Smalls here in New York City. Pianist Bruce Barth is performing selections off his brand new Trio live CD here at Smalls. Tonight we're going to talk about, one, his career, and also the need of him wanting to record this live album. This is a brand new label, and you are one of a handful of musicians that have decided to record on Spike Wilner's Smalls record label. How did he approach you, and what was the direction that you wanted to go musically when you decided to do this project?
Well, I talked to Spike for a while about doing a couple dates down here, and he just threw out the idea, as long as you're down here, would you like to make a recording for the new label? I said, absolutely. For one thing, I love to record live, and I haven't put a trio record out in quite a while. So for me, it was a chance to actually record I wanted basically to record some music that had been, for the most part, unrecorded, and focus on doing original music. So the record, actually, the CD is 9 tunes, 8 of which are my own, with an arrangement of Good Morning Heartache. So it's pretty much a chance to really, and also just to present the trio I love playing live and I love recording live because there's a certain freedom, certain energy from a live recording that's hard to capture in the studio.
This is the epicenter of where jazz music, I guess, thrives. And of all the jazz venues, what makes Smalls so different than a Smoke or a Blue Note or an Iridium or all the endless jazz clubs here in New York City?
Well, actually, I would say, when you mention Smoke, that to me is maybe the place most similar in that musicians are welcome and love to hang out there. Smalls certainly is the late night scene. I'd say probably the thing that makes Smalls unique is that just the quantity and quality, both things, of music. I mean, Smalls, you come in, a lot of times there's something at 7:30, solo piano, duet. Then a band, like our band tonight, 9:30 to 12. As soon as we're done, they'll have a quintet in, usually a house band for the jam session, great musicians playing a set, and then open up jam session, 3-4, till 3-4 in the morning. And Smalls, I think, being centrally located in the village, and musicians feel very comfortable here. You know, there's no hassle getting in the door for musicians. They like to hang, socialize. It's kind of the late night hang, I'd say.
This label being brand new and you being a part of the beginnings and the origins of this, what has this done for jazz music as well as live music?
Well, I think right now, with the state of the record business being what it is, there are fewer and fewer labels that are just actually paying musicians to make records these days, you know? In a lot of situations, musicians have to do their own recording, submit it to the label. So Spike is still picking musicians he likes and say, okay, I'd like you to record. And so I think it's filling a void at this point.
talk about your origins. You started playing piano when you were 5 years old, 6 years old in California. Tell me about your developments and your origins of developing a love for jazz music.
Well, I originally played by ear, which was a nice thing. I took European classical piano lessons when I was a kid, but I always liked to play by ear, figure out stuff. In Southern California, our household, we had a lot of music in the house. My parents said every kid has to take a lesson. So I think at one point, some took piano. I had a brother playing banjo. My sister was playing guitar at one point, but we all had to play something. So I was surrounded by music, and I always played things by ear, figured out things by ear. And it actually wasn't until I was 15 that when I turned 15, my brother gave me a Mose Allison record. That was my first jazz record, because I just didn't. The family had moved to the New York area, but there wasn't jazz education in the schools the way there is now. And when he gave me that record, I flipped out. And shortly after that, I was going down to my local record store. Back in the days when you had record stores with a jazz buyer, a jazz department with an expert, I'd hear different names. I'd say to the guy, man, could you recommend me a Miles Davis record? Or I just heard about this pianist, Oscar Peterson, or Wynton Kelly. So it was so exciting, my first Miles record, my first jazz piano record. So in that stage, and at that point, I didn't have any teachers. I was just taking the records home, trying to figure out as much as I could by ear. And it wasn't until much later that I actually took jazz lessons from Norman Simmons and Neil Walzer. Those were my first teachers. Norman's a well-known pianist who, of course, is still working and active in the New York area.
When you went to college, one of your mentors, I guess, and also a jazz icon, the late Jaki Byard, had a very instrumental part in your training. What was it like working with Jaki, and what were some of the things that you're applying in your music today, some of the things that you learned from him?
Well, the thing I loved about Jaki was his wide-open approach. It was just wide open is the best, and just there's a certain warmth there. It's really the best. The first word that comes to my mind is warmth. Many years later, I had the honor of playing. There was a round robin at the Brooklyn Conservatory of Music, organized by the late Enos Payne, and there were several pianists playing duets, and I got to play, I still remember 2 tunes with Jaki Byard, and just there's that feeling, the warmth, the old-time feeling. At the same time, I mean, Jaki could play anything, from the traditional stride to the avant-garde, and so I think that was transmitted to me, and he just come in, he was a very inquisitive mind, So every week, a lot of times he would just say, hey, check this out. He'd have a sheet music for something he'd been working on. It might have been a tune of his. It might have been something that he had recently discovered himself. Even, he was getting on in years when I studied with him, but he still had this sense of adventure and discovery. That's what we all try to sustain as musicians, At whatever age, we're still trying to do that, to learn new things.
Who are some of your musical influences?
I'd say many, many, many influences. I'd say probably my first favorite jazz pianists. When I was first coming up, I became a big Wynton Kelly fan, and Monk, Bud Powell. Those are probably the first guys I just really immersed myself in. But just a wide gamut, Since then, many players, many modern players, Herbie Hancock, Keith Jarrett, Bill Evans. I love Red Garland, Going back a few years, just the touch, the conception. Ahmad Jamal, the use of space and the sound. Just you can learn something from so many different people.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at Smalls here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank Bruce Barth for his time, as well as Spike Wilner and the staff here at Smalls for the hospitality. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Until next time, peace.